Welcome back to the Raw Prospect Football Podcast. My name is Nixon, joined by my co-host Michael Wein, and today we're going to be covering rounds 1 through 3 of the NFL Draft, going through key storylines, including Shedeur Sanders falling all the way down to round 5 today to the Cleveland Browns. Going through also our favorite picks from round 1, as well as just key things we want to talk about from the draft in the first couple days. If you like what we do here, make sure you leave a like on the video and subscribe to our channel. We record twice a week, once on this podcast and once on our Deep in the Heart of Longhorns Sports podcast. We release those episodes Fridays at 8 a.m. So stay tuned for Deep in the Heart of Longhorns Sports later this week as well. And with that all being said, Michael, how you doing, man?
I'm good. This is probably the most I've watched of the draft ever. Watched all around 1, all rounds 2 and 3, start to finish, and up until this podcast, I've watched all rounds 4, 5, going into round 6. So I've seen every single pick that's been made, and it's been fun. We're finally here, and we're almost past the draft. And once you get past the draft, that feeling of like you're getting closer to the fall starts to set in. It's also the end of spring practice for the Longhorns today. And so far, I believe we're up to 9 or 10 Longhorns that have been drafted. We might talk a little bit about that, especially the guys that were drafted in the first 3 rounds. 6 Longhorns drafted in the first 3 rounds. So let's just go ahead and jump right in.
Let's do it, man. So first things first, let's just go over some of these key storylines from round 1. So first thing is the quarterback trade-ups. So 2 different teams traded up. Well, one team traded up to get their quarterback, and another team that we thought was getting a quarterback said, screw that, we're trading down. At the number 2 spot, of course, the Cleveland Browns traded down with the Jacksonville Jaguars to number 5. Got a first-round pick next year, second-round pick this year, and a couple other picks swapped here and there, and drafted Mason Graham at number 5. Jags got Travis Hunter. Let's start with that trade. That was the story of the first round. What did you think of it, and what does it mean for both teams?
Well, it's hard to declare winners and losers on draft day because no matter how much you love a prospect or how much you think a team reaches for a prospect, you just don't ultimately know how things are going to play out in their rookie year and beyond. I love this trade for Cleveland. Now, you do have a really big opportunity cost here in that you're giving up on taking pound for pound what might be the best player in the entire draft in Travis Hunter, who will likely start out his NFL career playing offense and defense like he did in college. We'll see how long that lasts. But you acquire more capital. You now have 2 first-round draft picks next year in what will be an even more quarterback-heavy class. Although you already selected 2 quarterbacks in this year's class. But you trade down to number 5, only 3 spots, and you get the best defensive tackle in the draft. An outstanding run defender who led Michigan's defensive linemen with 45 tackles this past year. A guy who makes plays, slips blocks, gets in the gaps. A guy I really love in Mason Graham. Reads quarterbacks well, gets his hands up in passing lanes. You add to a defensive line that already has Myles Garrett, but the team has struggled to find kind of that running mate to go along with Myles Garrett, and now you put that guy on the interior, building from the inside out. I really like the trade from a Cleveland perspective because of the draft capital that they added, especially going into next year. And for the from the Jaguars' perspective, you get maybe the best player in the draft. So you can't hate it from that perspective. Hunter, you can say, is a generational prospect because we've never seen a guy play the volume of snaps he played at corner and wide receiver and be, All-American level good, Heisman level good at both positions. But you do give up your first round pick next year. And there's no guarantee that with your current personnel, the new GM and new coaching staff, that you're going to be in a position to where that first round pick next year potentially doesn't come back to bite you. And so it's interesting from a Jaguars perspective, but I love it from a Browns perspective. I think the Browns, actually I won't spoil it for our upcoming episode on Tuesday or later this week, but I think the Browns have had an excellent draft. Excellent draft, outside of maybe one pick that I didn't love. But I think they've had an excellent draft, and I love trading down and getting more draft capital. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's a win for both sides, man. I really do. And I think ultimately this was just Cleveland doing Travis Hunter a solid, just because I think Travis made clear throughout this entire process he wants to try and play both sides of the ball. Cleveland didn't really want him to do that. I think they wanted him more as a receiver and then maybe dabble here and there at corner because they didn't really need corner that badly currently. So I think Cleveland's perspective, I think they like Travis Hunter the person, and probably they just wanted to do him a solid, and they ended up winners for it because you get the draft capital and you probably get someone who I would guess is third on their big board at 5. So that's a huge deal for them. It's fantastic value. It's great process, I think, because you're not going to get the most out of Travis Hunter if you're Cleveland, at least not right away, because you just don't need a corner right now that badly, or at least, yeah.
But you can get the most out of Mason Graham, who top 5 player in the draft in most people's eyes, and it's not like you traded down from 2 to like pick number 12, where you're not able to get maybe an elite top 5 or 6 guy in this class. You traded down a couple spots and you still got a premier player, and you got a first round pick next year to add to your first round pick, to your own first round pick. I think it was an excellent trade by Cleveland, and I also really liked it from Jacksonville's perspective. New GM, new coach, and they're taking swings, being aggressive, and I don't hate that.
Yeah.
I don't hate it at all.
And the last thing is, when I saw mock drafts mocking Ashton Genty to the Jaguars at 5, it crossed my mind that their new GM coming from the Rams is someone that has gone through multiple regimes drafting running backs super late on in drafts and being extremely successful with that. And I didn't think they were going to pick Ashton Genty because of that. And I also thought, I think they'd rather, try and make a splash with their first pick of this regime. And I didn't think they would do this, but this definitely fits that bill. And I love the idea of that, just coming in and saying, to the owner, hey, we mean business. We want to win right now. And that's a great message to send your quarterback also.
So there was another trade later on in round 1. The New York Football Giants do what I think a lot of people were expecting for months, and that was take Abdul Carter at pick number 3. Great player. He'll add to their edge room, their pass rush. That room's looking really good for New York. But then later in round 1, as Shedeur starts to fall, the Giants trade back up into round 1 to pick number 25 with Houston, who trades down, and they get their quarterback, not Shedeur Sanders, Jaxson Dart. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think given that they're going to have Russell Wilson start, I think the process here makes sense in terms of you take the higher upside guy. Um, in theory, if you're going to have him sit and wait and learn, you want to actually get the guy that has the higher ceiling. And I'm not saying Shedeur can't be a good quarterback in the NFL. I actually do think Shedeur day one can be a top 25 ish starting quarterback in the NFL. But the fact is, I think the way the NFL views him is that that's his ceiling. I think he could be maybe top 12 ish. But what clearly this showed is that the NFL views him as someone that has a clear ceiling to his game and to his skill set. And I think they saw Jaxson Gard as a guy they can kind of mold into what they want, given that he's going to have to learn the NFL offense and he's going to have to, shore up a bunch of different things in his game as well in terms of, deep passing and attacking the intermediate part of the field.
Yeah, with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston entrenched atop the depth chart, you would assume the Giants are good at quarterback for 2025 with those two guys. Starts barring massive injury or devastation. Probably won't see the field much in 2025, as you alluded to. But that's good because they get a guy for the future. Maybe he's not the guy that ends up being their franchise quarterback, but they throw a dart, so to speak, at the dartboard. Get it? Jaxson Dart, whatever. And he'll get time to develop behind these veterans. And he's paired with an offensive coach, which I love, and Brian Daboll. Daboll, I think, likes his physical tools as a deep ball thrower and his athleticism. And he's kind of got the clay that they can mold with time into what they might want either next year in 2026, if that's when his time calls, or maybe it's 2 years down the road. But I think the Giants viewed him, and there was buzz going into round one that even if the Giants were to make a quarterback pick at 3, that it would have been Jaxson Dart over Shedeur Sanders. This was a guy that inside their organization, I think they just had graded higher than Shedeur Sanders. And now we found out teams that are round 5, passed on him multiple times. The entire NFL did. We'll talk about that here in a minute. So I don't hate it. Like, you throw a dart at the board, you get a young quarterback in, and you develop him. I think Brian Daboll viewed him as the best fit of any remaining quarterback in the class. And maybe this is a endorsement of Brian Daboll. Like, you get another shot at drafting your quarterback, and maybe we'll see this pairing of Daboll and Dart here going forward, because I'm a really big fan of Brian Daboll. I don't want him to potentially lose his job after this season, if that were to come to fruition. So maybe this is an endorsement of, him as a coach. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, next storyline, if you will, is we have to have this Shedeur Sanders discussion. I think let's frame it this way. Let's start with this. Why do you think Shedeur Sanders fell? And ultimately, do you think he can bounce back from this as a player? Do you think he has a future as a starter still in the NFL?
Why did he fall? Ultimately, I don't know if we'll ever find out. I think teams and front offices around the league have some questions about what it means to have Deion Sanders as his father, and what that kind of storyline overhang means for bringing him into your organization. Is Dion going to be a guy that's going to try to intervene in certain processes if you bring him in? I also, with him falling all the way down to round 5 with Cleveland, not even getting picked, on day 2 when there were, again, multiple quarterback needy teams. And not only that, Tyler Shuck went before him. Jalen Milroe goes to Seattle before he does.
Dylan Gabriel.
Dylan Gabriel again to Cleveland, the same destination. It'll certainly be interesting watching those two guys shake hands in the Browns quarterback room, along with Kenny Pickett. One of those things is not like the other. One of those things is not like the other. Anyway, I think for him to drop this far, I think it was a combination of, and this is pure speculation, what does Dion bring to the table? What is that going to mean for our organization? We're not only drafting Shedeur, we're drafting the son of Deion Sanders. What does that mean for our organization? Maybe some teams were a little hesitant to make a move, given they don't know what that really means. And I now have real questions about what happened in his interviews. Was there a certain way that he acted in his interviews? We know Shedeur is very confident. To some people, he can come off as cocky, but he always kind of backed it up in his play at Colorado. Led Colorado to their best season in maybe their school's history this past season with 9 wins. It's got to be one of those two things, because he's way too good to fall all the way down to the 5th round, in my opinion. In a class that's not great at quarterback outside of maybe you can say Cam Ward. I don't think he's QB number 6 in this class. You can have questions about his ceiling. You can have questions about maybe the way that he acts off the field or how he comes off as a person. But if you just put on the tape with his accuracy and his toughness, where he played, the circumstances that he played under, both in 2023 and 2024 with his offensive line and getting sacked the most of any quarterback in college football, his toughness, it had to be something other than just his tape. Because his tape, no matter what you think of him, to me isn't round 5.
It's at worst round 2 tape.
Yeah. And so that's my opinion on why he fell. Can he bounce back? I mean, I think he's going to get his shot. You look at the Browns quarterback room, it's a lot of interesting pieces, a lot of interesting storylines. You've got Deshaun Watson, who's not going to play much, if at all, this year with his second Achilles injury. Unfortunate for him. Joe Flacco, who we still know is capable of getting you in and out of a stadium with victories, but there's a real, ceiling to what you can do with him as your starter. But he'll probably be the leader in the clubhouse, I would have to assume, with it being him and Kenny Pickett and 2 rookies. But I absolutely think, Shedeur will get a chance to earn maybe quarterback 2 coming right out of the gates, and if something happens to Joe Flacco, he's going to get his shot at some point, I think, in the 2025 season. Remember, it's not about where you get picked. It's about what you do after you get picked, how you capitalize on it. And for Shedeur, I think with one of the NFL's all-time great players as his father, even though this may, I think, probably have taken a hit to their pride as a family. I thought, they probably thought Shedeur was at worst going in late round 1, if not early round 2, to fall all the way to round 5 has to hurt the pride a little bit. But I think it's a family that will use this right, and he'll get his shot to be quarterback number 2. I think he's better than Dylan Gabriel. I think he's better than Kenny Pickett, for sure. And so, yeah, I think he can bounce back. It's just, will it be a bounce back to just being a decent rookie starter, like a top 25 solid rookie in the NFL, or will he really make teams look bad and potentially go on to have maybe closer to like a top 15 level quarterback kind of career? But that's kind of how I view the whole Shedeur Sanders thing. How do you see it?
Yeah, I completely forgot. Well, first of all, I completely forgot that Joe Flacco went back to Cleveland. That means that they have potentially 5 quarterbacks on their payroll if Dylan Gabriel and Kenny Pickett and Shedeur make the roster. So that's something. But first thing is, I think the NFL, for one, I think the interviews are for sure a question mark. But beyond that, him not throwing at the combine, the way he treated the process in general, just kind of shrugging it off, I think, and just kind of trying to I don't know, saying he's I think acting like he was good enough to where he didn't have to do those things and kind of respect the process of the NFL draft. And I think maybe scouts were put off by that.
It rubbed teams the wrong way.
Yeah, and if you think about what happened at the Shrine Bowl, essentially he was invited along with a lot of his teammates from Colorado to try to get him to come and participate in Shrine Bowl. He shows up day one in sweatpants and barely even participates. Doesn't show up for day 2 and 3. Doesn't show up for the game. And with all the scouts that show up to, evaluate you for something like that, saying that you're going to show up and then being like, no, I'm good. Like that's not only like that's disrespectful. And I don't personally have a problem with, him being confident in himself. Like, you got to be confident if you're going to be a, pro athlete at any level. But I think that is where I think things kind of went off the rails.
Yeah, I think there were just steps in the pre-draft process, whether it be interviews, the way he treated the combine and his pro day, things leading up to the draft that probably rubbed general managers and front offices the wrong way. But even if he rubs you the wrong way, it's still insane to let him drop to the 5th round, which is the biggest story.
I think the NFL collectively wanted to make a statement, I think, to any player in the future as well.
Yeah. Yep, and I can tell you this, Mel Kiper and Skip Bayless are not happy about it.
Well, I think that.
All right. Well,
I think that does it for that conversation. Now to kind of, I guess, shift back to the first round of the draft in general. The third storyline is kind of up to us. The topic is most interesting selection. So we each get to choose 1 or 2 picks from round 1 that we thought were interesting. So this is not the best pick. This is not the worst pick. Just interesting in terms of fit, interesting in terms of, how said team viewed the board and made that decision. So who do you have as your most interesting pick from round 1?
Well, the most obvious one that stands out to me is Colston Loveland going to the Bears at 10 when Tyler Warren was also available. Now, look, I mean, Loveland reminds me a lot of Sam Laporta with the Lions. He's just a little bit bigger. And it's interesting that the Bears, with a new head coach and Ben Johnson, who comes from Detroit, who drafted Sam Laporta a couple of years ago, adored, seemed to like Loveland a little more than Tyler Warren, obviously, with this pick. But they give Caleb Williams, a legit, versatile receiving threat in all areas of the field with Loveland. I really like him as a player. Now, Warren, I think, is a much better blocker, more complete tight end prospect of the two. But Loveland's, I think, you could argue, is the better receiver. And I think he's a pretty good fit for everything Ben Johnson wants to do. So that would be like the first like really interesting draft pick that I think we could dissect, because Tyler Warren fell all the way to a 14, I believe, with Indianapolis. Yep. So what were your thoughts on that pick by Chicago?
I actually, I don't mind it. I think, I don't mind it at all. I think if you're a GM and you like Colston Loveland better, I think in theory you would have maybe wanted to trade down, but at the end of the day, if you want your guy and you don't have a trade partner, just take him. I think he's good enough to warrant going in the top 10, so I have no issue with it. I think the Bears, kind of view him as their Sam Laporta. I think Tyler Warren would have been more of the, jump ball, run after catch type, whereas Colston Loveland is going to be their, just third down conversion machine, possession tight end. I think maybe a little bit more polished as a blocker than Tyler Warren as well, which makes a difference. So, but it's splitting hairs, but I really didn't mind it.
So if you had to pick one interesting selection from round one, outside of that, who would it be?
The one that immediately comes to mind for me was Emeka Egbuka going to the Bucs at 19.
That's what I was thinking.
That was a head scratcher. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think just in theory, in your mind, you go, okay, what does this mean for Chris Godwin's injury recovery? And what does this mean for the guy they drafted last year out of Washington as well, Jalen McMillan? So those two guys are both kind of slot wide receivers as well. So are you moving one of those guys outside? Are you kind of planning to move on from Godwin, even though you just gave him an extension? It's strange. But I do think if they had Emeka Egbuka as the top guy on their board, I can't really blame them too much. I think he's a really good player, and I think he's going to be impactful. I don't know about how impactful he'll be in season one as a rookie, given their depth chart. But moving forward past that, I do see him as a guy that will make an impact on your team.
Yeah, I didn't so much find it surprising or interesting to me that so much Egbuka was their guy, if he was their top receiver or their top player on the board here, because he's a really good player. The production at Ohio State speaks for itself. He's a really good route runner. He's a quarterback's best friend. He's a offensive coordinator's best friend, in that he's maybe the best blocking wide receiver in the entire draft, which is also valuable to an offense. You're not going to have any character or off the field concerns with Egbuka, and I think eventually you will get a payoff here. He will be a really good player in the NFL. But to me, it was more so you got glaring needs at all three levels on your defense. And so could you have gone secondary here? Could you have gone Jahad Campbell, I think most people thought would maybe be the pick here? What defensive line was another thing. I just view defense maybe as more the direction they would look to go, but You know, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan, and Emeka Egbuka. He should fit in decently well. You add in Mike Evans to that conversation. They've got their wide receivers. It's just going to be about what did that defense look like, and we'll get to more maybe of Tampa Bay's draft on Tuesday when we go through winners
and to your
losers
point,
from
they
each
did
division.
go all defense with their remaining selection so far. They double dipped that corner and
True.
double dipped that edge. So,
I'll throw another interesting pick. It was the Chargers at
yeah,
22, going Amari and Hampton, the running back out of North Carolina. You can make the argument that the biggest hole in the Chargers' offense last year was the lack of big time ability at the running back position. But you signed Najee Harris earlier this offseason to a 1-year deal, and then you doubled down on this position by drafting a running back in the first round with Amari and Hampton, two big physical downhill runners. The Chargers, I think, completed their build of like a powerful, explosive backfield by adding this player here. True 3-down running back, can execute in a zone or gap scheme. And look, Harris is only signed for 1 year, so I think the pick makes a ton of sense. But it was interesting. I can see the vision that Jim Harbaugh has now for this offense. That was an interesting pick, and then maybe the most interesting move of the first round after that was the Falcons trading back up into the first round to get James Pierce Jr. Did you have any thoughts on this move?
yeah, I think freaking finally, man. Like you double dip at edge. You had to get aggressive to do it, but I like that they were aggressive about addressing this. Like it's been years, man. Like it's been. I mean, even going back to just a couple years after their Super Bowl run, like their edge position has been just bleak, to put it lightly. So double dipping, I think, with two guys that I think in different ways are extremely high upside and kind of, I guess, betting on your coaching staff to develop both of them and essentially saying like, hey, like one of these guys surely will hit, right? And if both hit, then even better. So I really like it. I really like the idea of double dipping. I think you'd like to be able to wait till round 2 to do it, but if you have a guy you want to go get, then go get him.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it either. He's a dynamic pass rusher. We talked about him in the pre-draft process. And you have him and Jalen Walker now. And so, at the very least, maybe one of these guys hits and you have a premier pass rusher. It's something the Falcons have been lacking. And I think even the Rams side of this, like they have to feel pretty good about their end of the swap as well. What they get, was it a first or second rounder next year? I don't remember exactly.
I think the Falcons
they
gave up
get
2 seconds, I believe. I want to say.
The Falcons gave up a lot to move up into the bottom of the first to get James Pierce. They gave up their 2026 first round pick plus number 46 and 242 this year. So they gave up their first round pick next year, their second round pick this year, and a 7th round pick this year. So I think if you're the Rams, I mean, you feel really good about that as well, because what's next year? Strong quarterback class, and how much longer is Matthew Stafford going to play? We just ultimately don't know right now. So we'll see. But I think if you're the Rams, you can feel pretty good about your side of things as well.
That's a really good point. Yeah, but getting draft capital for next year in a draft where you can trade up for potentially a round one level quarterback, depending on where you're sitting at. So that's huge. I think that's a point that is key to this move for sure from a Rams perspective.
Yep. All right. Well, that finishes up our 3 storyline segment. Where do we want to go next with this conversation? As we're about 30 minutes in here.
Next, we're going to share our 2 favorite picks of round 1. So we'll do that. And then to close out the show, we're going to give 2, I guess, best value picks, I guess, from rounds 2 and 3 that we have selected out. So first with the, favorite picks from round 1, which picks stand out to you?
Well, outside of the ones we've already discussed, I gotta tell you what, man. I love Matthew Golden going to the Packers at 23. It marks the end of a big time streak for Green Bay. They hadn't selected a wide receiver in the first round in 23 years. Can you believe that? We've talked about it all offseason long. They needed talent infusion at this position. Christian Watson's 2025 is really uncertain because of his ACL tear that he suffered in January in the playoffs. And in Golden, you're getting maybe wide receiver 1 in this class. You could look back on. There's a good chance you can look back at this class and Matthew Golden be the best wide receiver in it. And so you pair him with the wide receivers that you have and the tight ends that you have. And his speed, his 4.29 speed, along with his production, both at Houston and last year at Texas, where he averaged 17 yards per catch. I love that pick. I'd give it an A. And it's not just because I'm a Texas Longhorn. It's because Matthew Golden is, I think, that good. And then in terms of another pick that I really, well, I'll bounce it back to you while I think about that. What pick did you really like outside of the ones we've already discussed?
I absolutely love T-Mac going to Carolina. It was bittersweet because I wanted T-Mac to go to my Cowboys, but I actually ended up being very happy with who the Cowboys selected anyway. But, man, Carolina, the turnaround that they have made in, 2 calendar years from, the aftermath of Bryce's rookie year to now has just been crazy. And, you plug Tetero McMillan in there because he doesn't like being called Tet, so I got to try to not do that. You plug him in there, and you immediately slot him in as wide receiver 1, your X. Xavier Legette moves into a role that he's more capable of doing, in my opinion, which is being a deep threat and a run-after-catch type of weapon. Then you have Jalen Coker, who's still developing as a, kind of a breakout star last year as an undrafted wide receiver. Who knows what he could be? He could end up being your wide receiver 2 long-term, depending on how Xavier Legette turns out. But you still have him. We still don't know what he's going to be yet. And then, of course, Adam Thielen is going to move back into his kind of support slot role instead of being a first option at times. So just the offense is just going to fit way better. Not to mention the offensive line has been completely addressed, and the line is looking a whole world better than what it did 2 years ago. So, man, like the Panthers, they absolutely nailed it.
Yeah, I guess we can just take the opportunity now to talk about our team's first round picks, because that's what I'm going to do. Derek Harmon, man. I I love it for Pittsburgh. I think they made the right move here, even though there were quarterbacks here to be taken. Shedeur was on the board. Jaxson Dart was on the board. I think they probably considered those options. But I think they made the right move here, selecting the best player available to them, which was Derek Harmon, a guy that they brought in for a top 30 visit. And to really fortify a defensive front that was exploited big time in the playoffs and down the stretch last year against Baltimore. I think he's going to step right in, right next to Cam Hayward, right next to, God, why am I blanking on his name?
Oh my
The
goodness!
guy
Yeah,
out of
yeah.
Keanu Benton. Keanu
Uh,
Benton. He'll step right in and I think become a really stout run defender and a
yeah, I
disruptive
almost said
pass rusher
Keanu Reeves.
for the Steelers. I don't think this pick could have been. It couldn't have been easy to pass up a quarterback, which they desperately need. And by the way, they did pick a quarterback in round 6, but they didn't reach necessarily for a quarterback, and they addressed a big need. Defensive line is a big need, and they ended up double down. They doubled down on it in the fourth round, or in the fifth round. Yeah, in the fifth round, and the fourth round, with Jack Sawyer and the defensive lineman out of Iowa. They're really doubled down on. We are not going to get exposed like this in the run game again, and we need an infusion of youth on our defensive line because Cam Hayward, while he's still unbelievably playing at like an all-pro level right now at age 35, coming off a first-team
Yeah,
all-pro level
yeah.
season, which is unbelievable, will likely be in Cannes someday. You just don't know how much longer he's got, how much he's got left in the tank, and so. And Derek Harmon was kind of a guy, I think, on the ascent. Began his career at Michigan State, transferred to Oregon last year, and, finished his career on the ascent and not the descent. Second team All-American, 5 sacks, 10.5 tackles for loss. I just think his fit in this scheme with the Steelers is perfect. He'll have the opportunity to maybe step in at that 3 technique when Cam Hayward eventually decides to hang it up, and you get a disruptor on the interior, which is something they need. We know the Steelers have good edge rushers, but the disruption on the interior, both in the run game and in the pass game, has been lacking. And so I really like I think it's a rock solid first round pick, but kind of a bittersweet night for Derek Harmon. I didn't know this going in. His mother actually been on life support in the hospital for I don't know how long now, but he goes to he went to the hospital right after the Steelers picked him to tell his mom that he had been drafted by the Steelers, and shortly thereafter his mom actually passed away. So tough.
Wow.
My thoughts and my prayers are with Derek Harmon. High character guy, but I think he's going to come in and do really good things for Pittsburgh, hopefully.
Yeah, man. I wish him the best on that. That's horrible, man. I love him as a player, but oh my goodness, like I'm rooting for him even more now.
Definitely.
Just for life's sake. But on that note, I guess
Yep,
I guess I have
sure.
to talk about the Cowboys now. So Tyler Booker, man, I think it's really interesting that in certain mock drafts he would fall all the way out of the first round, and in most mock drafts he'd be like near the end of the first round. But I actually do think he's the best guard in this draft for certain schemes. I don't think he's a fit for a wide zone running scheme. Like he doesn't have the movement skills for that. But if you're a head up blocking scheme, like hat on a hat type of running game, then he's going to thrive in that. And I think for the Cowboys, they got their guy. Like they is who they had their eye on based on everything that Cowboys Nation had been hearing. And we thought maybe that they would trade down if they were looking at it, but they stayed and picked, and ultimately I'm happy. And I think it would have been tempting for them to, go the flashy route, take a Omari in Hampton, take a receiver. And obviously I wanted T-Mac personally, but I think ultimately this was probably the best case scenario for the team as a whole.
Yeah, he's a mountain of a man, to say the least. And you could probably say he's the most physically dominant run-blocking offensive lineman in the class. And I'll just say this, like the conversation he had with Micah Parsons, I think on Bleacher Report when they were doing their draft stuff, I think he won Micah Parsons over as the draft pick here for the Cowboys. He talked about how he likes to make people or his opposition not like football anymore. That's his goal when he's going up against, whoever he's blocking. His goal is to take their love of football away. And that really fired Micah Parsons up. And it addresses a big need for Dallas as well. And they've done a nice job, pretty nice job evaluating talent along the offensive line in recent years. And they really love the name Tyler on their offensive line. So I really like it. I think it's a rock solid pick for Dallas, despite what some others think. How many Tylers does that make on the Cowboys offensive line? It's Tyler Guyton,
and then
Tyler Booker.
What's his name?
There's one
Tyler
more.
Smith. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. 3 Tylers.
I would need Emmy on that one.
3
How many Tylers
yeah,
Emmy,
Tyler
on
Smith.
on the Cowboys offensive line?
Yeah, Tyler Smith was the last one. Yeah.
Tyler Smith. 3 Tylers. Wow, that's something else. Okay. Well, let's close out the show with a couple day 2, day 3, or day 2 picks that you thought were good value.
Yeah.
So you can go ahead and start us off.
Oh man, let me get my board in front of me. So for one, I thought the Will Johnson selection in round 2 by the Cardinals immediately caught my eye. I think in terms of value, you can't do much better than that. Obviously, for him to have dropped that far, there's a lot of concern with his medicals, given like the kind of the knee that he had during the season and the turf toe, and then there's a lot of concern on his ability to stay healthy. But regardless of that, I think you look at the player himself, and I think you could argue he's the best corner in this draft. I think most would agree that he's the best corner in this draft, depending on what you think of Travis Hunter. So as long as he stays healthy, man, going into a system where he's going to keep his eyes on the quarterback, kind of play cover 4, kind of paired with all the stunts that the Cardinals want to run in their front 7, I think it's a fantastic fit if he can stay on the field.
That's certainly the biggest question there. Because he definitely would have been a first-round pick if some of those health questions didn't exist. I look at the board here. I'll tell you what. The Texans double backed on Iowa State wide receivers. They take Jaden Higgins in the second round with the Giants pick, in that trade down for Jaxson Dart. And then in the third round, they end up taking Jalen Noel, the other Iowa State wide receiver. And so you add 2 wide receivers to this room that has some questions with the injury to, the departure of Stephon Diggs, first of all. And then you have the injury to Tank Dell. So you need some depth and an injection of youth at this position. And I really love both players there. So I like what the Texans did there. And then in terms of value, I mean, I got to tell you, man, I've been trying to tell people for months that Caleb Johnson was going to be a guy that the Steelers would have a big time interest in. And he ends up falling to them at 83. I think that's pretty good value on the running back that they wanted. And I got to tell you, I think the Chargers did pretty well getting a guy like Jamari Caldwell.
Yeah.
Big defensive tackle out of Oregon in round 3 at pick number 86. 6'2", 330 pounds. They lose Poona Ford in the offseason in free agency. They were 27th in yards allowed per carry last season, and he's an excellent kind of run-stuffing prospect who I think can help the Chargers and give them some depth there. So those are a couple as I scroll through the board here that stand out to me. And then obviously, I think we should, unless you have any others do you have any others that you want to mention? We should close out the show by mentioning maybe some
real quick,
some Longhorns.
The Cowboys
Longhorns
selecting Donovan
that were picked.
Izaraku, I thought was a steal as well. A guy that I thought could have snuck into the back end of that first round. You get him at pick number 44. And then Nick Scorton going to Carolina. Like, holy moly. Like, I think, I don't know. I'm just really high on what Carolina is building there. And I've done this before with Carolina, all these draft picks that, like, they keep on, like, doing this where they draft, the draft darlings, and then they still suck after they, like damn. But hopefully it works out this time for them because they got their quarterback now. It's they got their coach, and hopefully David Tepper can just shut the fuck up.
Yeah. All right. So a couple last things here as we're here Saturday afternoon, 4:00 Central Time. We're about 3/4 of the way through round number 6, and still no Quinn Ewers, still no Cam Williams. Actually, take that back. I take it back, ladies and gentlemen. Right as I say that, Cam Williams pops up on my screen. He goes to the Eagles at pick 207. Cam Williams goes to the Eagles late in round 6. So good for him there. But still no Quinn Ewers and still no Isaiah Bond.
Left tackle, that big.
Those are the two big Longhorns.
I can't remember his name. Oh my goodness, that's gonna drive me nuts. That has like that kind of vibes where they draft a guy in like the 6th round that's crazy talented and just like a mountain. And then it ends up working out. Hold on, I have to look this up. Eagles left tackle. No,
is it Jason Peters?
Retired.
Is that his name?
It's Jordan Mailata. There it is. They drafted him. He was like a rugby player. They drafted him in the 7th round, and then he's been like a franchise left tackle. So if it ends up like that, then as a Cowboys fan, I would, that would be bittersweet for sure.
All right, so really quick as a parting shot here, Longhorns to get drafted. We've got Kelvin Banks going 9 to the Saints. We've got Jade Barron 20 to the Colts. We've got Matthew Golden, as I mentioned, 23 to the Packers. And then you've got, in round 2, you got Alfred Collins. He went number 43 to the 49ers. You've got Vernon Broughton in the 3rd round. He goes to the New Orleans Saints. The Saints doubled down on Longhorns. Late in round 2, last pick of round 2, Andrew Makuba to the Eagles. I gotta tell you, man, the Eagles have a thing now for they've got a thing for some of these Longhorns players in this draft.
Yeah, round 6 or round 5.
You got Jaden Blue to the Cowboys in round 5.
Barron Sorrell to the Packers.
Gunnar Helm to the Titans. Barron Sorrell to the Packers. Gunnar Helm to the Titans. Do any of those players, team fits stand out to you before we get out of here?
I guess we'll go to that round 2 pick of Alfred Collins, just because that defensive line room in San Francisco right now is just barren. Not Barron Sorrell, but barren. I think just he has a chance to go in there and immediately be a 3-down player, which I didn't think was 100% going to happen in every situation that he ended up in. So I'm happy for Alfred Collins for sure, just because he gets to kind of show off what he can do as a pass rusher. Because I think he has more pass rushing chops in the tank than what he showed at Texas.
We've got, let me see here. Okay, so there's 257 picks total in the draft, and we're at pick 209. So there's 48 picks left. 48 picks left. Does Quinn Ewers go in the last 48 picks? So far in this 6th round, we've got 3 quarterbacks to go. Kyle McCord went to the Eagles at, what pick was that? 181. Will Howard went to the Steelers at 185. And then Riley Leonard went to the Colts at 189. So we're now down to quarterback 10. And Ewers still hasn't heard his name called. Do you think he'll get his name called here pretty soon?
I don't know. I'm sort of torn just because I don't know. I think it just would depend on who's picking ahead. Because if you're say a team like the Lions and you need a backup QB, I wouldn't hate having Quinn Ewers in the room just as a flyer and seeing if he can make the team. Okay, to put it short, yeah, I think he will get drafted. I have no clue where at this point. Ooh, that's a tough one.
What about Isaiah Bond?
Oh, geez. Yeah, if he hasn't gone at this point, then... Wow, yeah, I wonder if it's something with... his pre-draft process as well, then. Yeah, I'm gonna say maybe. I'm gonna have a cop-out answer on that one. No.
All right. We'll see what happens with those Longhorns. And then there's also a couple other offensive linemen that could potentially go here in round 7. Jake Majors and Hayden Connor are 2 potential options there. I don't think we've heard David Benda yet. Maybe he'll get drafted near the end. We'll see. But I think we set the over-under at 11.5. And I'm not sure the Longhorns have quite hit that yet. I think they're at 9.
It's going to be close.
9 or 10. 9 or 10 players drafted so far. So I think I think if Ewers and Bond go, I think we'll hit that pretty safely. But if only one of those goes, I don't know if they'll hit that number. But we'll see what happens. Good draft. I really enjoyed the pre-draft process, and now, this kind of completes almost. I mean, team building isn't 100% complete yet, but I mean, this is the next big step in getting to football season. So we'll continue to put out good football content, but I mean, I haven't really thought a whole lot about what what the week to week now is going to look like moving forward into May and into the summer months. As now that because our schedule has been draft, free agency, draft up until now. So now that we don't have all that, we'll have to figure some things out. But I think that's going to do it for today's episode. So, Emmy, do you have any other things you want to mention before
man.
we
I
get out
think
of
we
here?
covered it all, man. This was a great draft, but it was I gotta say, it was a horrible draft to be a mock drafter, because after pick three, it was just like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck is happening, bro? Like, I don't even know anymore. But yeah, it was really fun to watch. Super unpredictable. This is why we love the NFL, man. It's all year.
Yep. All right. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode. We're recording this on Saturday. We'll try to get this up early on in the week, and then we'll have 2 more episodes coming near the end of the week, as we mentioned, as we were kind of thrown off this week on our normal record schedule, but we'll get back to it this upcoming week. And we'll see you guys, next time on here on the Raw Prospect Football Podcast. So enjoy the rest of the draft. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And we'll see you next time. Peace out.
I thought that.
Yeah. Very good podcast. Very good. We kept it